The city's hustle faded into a distant murmur as Stephanie walked through the crowded streets, lost in her own world. Her light brown hair, a cascade of soft waves, shimmered under the afternoon sun, drawing admiring glances from passers. But her expressive eyes, once brimming with dreams and laughter, now held a quiet melancholy. She was a living paradox, her striking beauty a stark contrast to the sorrow etched in her soul. Stephanie's mind wandered back to her college days, a time of innocence and hope. It was then she had met Timothy, a man whose mere presence commanded attention. He was a Navy SEAL, strong and courageous, yet with a gentleness that belied his tough exterior. Their love had been a whirlwind, defying the norms with its intensity and depth. She remembered the day they met, as clear as if it were yesterday. "Excuse me, is this seat taken?" Timothy's voice had first interrupted her thoughts in the Startled, Stephanie looked up into his piercing blue eyes. "No, it's not," she replied, her heart skipping a beat. "I'm Timothy," he said with a smile, extending his hand. "Stephanie," she replied, feeling an instant connection. Their conversations flowed effortlessly, from literature to dreams, and soon they were inseparable. Despite the age difference and Stephanie's youth, they were drawn together like two stars bound by an unseen force. But as she walked, her heart ached with the memory of their last goodbye. Timothy had been called for a mission, a danger they both knew was part of his life. He had held her close, his voice a soft whisper. "I'll come back to you, Stephanie. Wait for me." But he never did. A combat mission had claimed his life, leaving her alone with a 3-month-old son. The pain of that loss had never truly faded, only dulled with time. Stephanie was pulled back to the present as she reached the park, Justin's favourite place. She watched him play, his laughter a balm to her wounded heart. He was the spitting image of Timothy, with the same piercing blue eyes and infectious smile. "Mummy, look! I'm flying!" Justin exclaimed, running with arms outstretched. Stephanie smiled, her heart swelling with love. "You're flying so high, my little eagle." Justin's laughter echoed through the park, a sound that filled her with both joy and a poignant reminder of what she had lost. She knew she had to be strong for him, to be both mother and father in Timothy's absence. As the sun began to set, casting a golden hue over the park, Stephanie gathered Justin into her arms. "Time to go home, champ," she said softly. "Can Daddy see me from the stars?" Justin asked, his innocent question piercing her heart. "Yes, my love, he's watching over us," she replied, fighting back tears. As they walked back home, Stephanie's thoughts drifted to the loneliness that awaited her once Justin was asleep. The nights were the hardest, the silence amplifying the absence of Timothy's laughter, his touch, his love. That night, as she tucked Justin into bed, she whispered a promise to both her son and the memory of Timothy. "I will find happiness again for us. I will not let your sacrifice be in vain." With Justin's gentle breathing as her lullaby, Stephanie gazed out the window at the star-filled sky, wondering what the future held. Little did she know, the echoes of her lost dream were about to lead her down a path she never expected. Stephanie's life, post-Timothy's demise, was a monochrome of routine and responsibilities. Her days were filled with the mundane tasks of motherhood and the ache of loneliness when night fell. Justin, now a lively 4-year-old, was her only solace. It was during one of her routine visits to the City Council office for a permit application that she first crossed paths with Scott. Scott, the assistant mayor, was a man of charisma and influence, his reputation preceding him. Their first meeting was brief, but left an indelible mark on Stephanie. "Roberts, right? I've heard you've been having some trouble with your application." Scott had approached her in the hallway, his voice smooth and confident. "Yes, it's been a bit of a maze," Stephanie replied, slightly taken aback by his sudden interest. "Let me see what I can do. No one should have to navigate this bureaucracy alone," Scott offered with a warm smile. Their interactions grew more frequent, with Scott showing up under the guise of assistance. Each meeting stirred something in Stephanie, a mixture of excitement and apprehension. It wasn't long before their professional encounters turned personal. One evening, Scott invited her for dinner under the pretense of discussing community issues. The dinner was at an upscale restaurant, a stark contrast to Stephanie's simple life. "You look beautiful tonight, Stephanie. It's nice to see you out of your regular element," Scott complimented as they sat down. "Thank you, Scott. It's been a while since I've been to a place like this," Stephanie admitted, feeling a bit out of place. Their conversation flowed effortlessly, and Stephanie found herself drawn to Scott's charm and attentiveness. He listened to her stories about Justin and her dreams, making her feel seen and heard. As the night progressed, Scott's intentions became clear. "Stephanie, I must confess, my interest in you goes beyond community concerns. I find myself deeply captivated by you," he confessed, his gaze intent. Stephanie's heart raced. She was torn between the thrill of newfound attention and the moral complexity of Scott's marital status. "Scott, I'm flattered. But you're a married man," she responded, her voice a mix of temptation and caution. Scott leaned in, his voice low and persuasive. "I know, and I've never been in this situation before. But with you, it feels different." The ensuing months were a whirlwind of secret meetings and passionate rendezvous. Stephanie was swept up in the illusion of love, basking in the affection and attention Scott showered upon her. But deep down, she knew this happiness was built on One evening, as they sat in a secluded corner of a dimly lit lounge, Scott held her hand across the table. "I haven't felt this alive in years, Stephanie. You've brought light into my world," he whispered, his eyes reflecting a sincerity that made her heart flutter. "Scott, what are we doing?" "This isn't right," Stephanie murmured, the reality of their situation clouding the moment. "We're two souls who found each other in unlikely circumstances. Isn't that worth exploring, despite the odds?" Scott reasoned, gently caressing. The affair continued, shrouded in secrecy and stolen moments. Yet Stephanie couldn't shake off the gnawing feeling of guilt and the looming sense of an impending storm. The storm finally arrived when news broke of Scott's arrest for corruption. The man she had clung to for support and affection was suddenly gone, leaving her with a heart full of questions and a life shrouded in scandal. As Scott's trial and incarceration unfolded, Stephanie's attempts to reach out to him were met with a cold, unyielding silence. Her letters, once filled with words of love and hope, remained unanswered, each one a reminder of the illusion she had so desperately believed in. Broken-hearted and disillusioned, Stephanie found herself back at square one, grappling with financial struggles and the harsh reality of her choices. The glamour of her affair with Scott had vanished, leaving her to face the consequences alone. The final blow came when she realized she needed to find a job. With a heavy heart, she accepted a position at a mobile phone store, a far cry from the dreams she once harbored. Each day at the store was a reminder of how far she had strayed from her path. But fate had a different plan for Stephanie. Among the customers and the daily grind, she would soon encounter a glimmer of hope, a chance at redemption in the form of an unexpected connection. Little did she know, her encounter with Brandon at the store was about to change the course of her life. The days at the mobile phone store turned into weeks, and Stephanie found herself gradually adapting to her new routine. The job was mundane, but it provided a much-needed distraction from her turbulent thoughts. Among the customers who came and went, Brandon was a recurring presence, his visits becoming the highlights of her days. One afternoon, as the store buzzed with the usual activity, Brandon walked in, his arrival now a familiar and welcome sight to Stephanie. "Hey, Stephanie, I need your expertise again. This phone you sold me is great, but I think I need some accessories." Brandon greeted her with his charming smile. "Sure, let's see what we have," Stephanie replied, feeling a warmth in her heart at his approach. As they browsed through phone cases and earphones, their conversation veered from mundane topics to more personal ones. "So, how did you end up working here? You always seem a bit out of place, if you don't mind me saying," Brandon asked, his tone curious yet respectful. Stephanie hesitated, but something about Brandon's earnest gaze encouraged her to open up. "Life took some unexpected turns. I had to start over, for my son's sake and mine," she shared, her voice tinged with vulnerability. "I understand. Starting over isn't easy. I've been there," Brandon empathized, his eyes reflecting a depth of understanding. Their conversation was interrupted by other customers, but the connection had been made. Brandon's visits became more frequent, and their bond deepened with each interaction. They shared stories, laughed, and slowly, Stephanie's guarded heart began to open up to the possibility of new beginnings. A few weeks later, Brandon invited Stephanie for coffee after her shift. The invitation was casual, but for Stephanie, it felt like a significant step forward. Sitting across from each other in the cozy cafe, its atmosphere was a blend of nervous excitement and comfortable familiarity. "So, Brandon, tell me more about yourself." "What do you do?" Stephanie asked, stirring her coffee. "I work in construction. Started as a labourer, worked my way up. Now I manage projects. It's challenging but rewarding," Brandon explained, his passion for his work evident in his eyes. "That's impressive. It sounds like you've worked hard to get where you are," Stephanie remarked, genuinely impressed. "Yeah, it's been a journey, but enough about me. What about you? What are your dreams?" Brandon inquired, leaning forward, genuinely interested in her response. Stephanie paused, a question she hadn't considered in a long time. "Well, I always wanted to do something creative. Maybe interior design or something along those lines," she shared, a hint of a long-lost dream sparked. "As someone who works in buildings, I can say that a good interior designer is worth their weight in gold." Brandon encouraged, his words uplifting. Their conversation flowed naturally, and soon, hours had passed. As they walked out of the cafe, Brandon hesitated before speaking. "Stephanie, I know we're just getting to know each other, but I feel a connection with you. I'd like to explore where this could go, if you're okay with that." Stephanie looked into Brandon's eyes, seeing the sincerity and warmth she had come to appreciate. "I'd like that, Brandon. Let's take it one step at a time," she replied, a smile spreading across her face. In the weeks that followed, Stephanie and Brandon's relationship blossomed. They went on dates, talked for hours, and shared parts of their lives that they had kept guarded from the world. Stephanie introduced Brandon to Justin, and to her surprise, they bonded instantly. Brandon's kindness and playful nature won Justin over, filling a void left by Timothy's absence. It wasn't long before their casual dates turned into a deep, meaningful relationship. Brandon was not just her partner. He became a father figure to Justin, embracing the role with a love and responsibility that touched Stephanie's heart. On a warm summer evening, as they walked hand in hand in the park, Brandon stopped, turning to face Stephanie. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow around them. "Stephanie, these past months have been the happiest I've been in a long time. You and Justin mean the world to me. I know this might be sudden, but I don't want to spend another day without you in my life. Will you marry me?" Brandon asked, his voice filled with emotion. Tears welled up in Stephanie's eyes, her heart bursting with a joy she thought she'd never feel again. "Yes, Brandon, I will marry you," she replied, her voice barely a whisper. Their kiss sealed a new chapter in Stephanie's life, a chapter filled with hope, love, and the promise of a new beginning. It was a testament to the resilience of the human heart, to its ability to heal and find love again against all odds. Years of shared laughter, love, and life seemed to pass in the blink of an eye for Stephanie and Brandon. Their marriage, a harmonious blend of mutual respect and affection, flourished as Brandon's construction business grew. Stephanie found joy in being a wife and mother and in supporting Brandon's aspirations. Justin, now a spirited 8-year-old, thrived in the warmth of their family life. However, the unblemished happiness they had built together began to show cracks when Brandon started spending more time at work. His new project was demanding, and it often kept him away from home, leaving Stephanie to confront lonely evenings and weekends. One quiet evening, Stephanie sat at the dining table, sifting through bills and household accounts. Justin was upstairs, immersed in his world of books and toys. The clock ticked away, marking Brandon's delayed return. "Mom, is Dad working late again?" Justin asked, coming down the stairs, his expression a mix of disappointment and concern. "Yes, honey, he's got a lot on his plate with the new project," Stephanie replied, forcing a smile. "Can we call him? I miss him." Justin's voice was small, a reflection of his life. "Of course, let's call him," Stephanie agreed, though a part of her dreaded the familiar excuse she'd hear on the other end. The call went to voicemail, adding to the growing void in Stephanie's heart. She reassured Justin, but her own reassurance was wearing thin. As the days turned into weeks, Stephanie's concern morphed into suspicion. Brandon's behavior had changed. He was distant, preoccupied, and often unreachable. Her intuition, honed by past heartaches, sent alarm bells ringing. Confronting these fears, Stephanie waited for Brandon one night, determined to seek the truth. "Brandon, we need to talk. I feel like you're drifting away from us." Stephanie started, her voice laced with worry as Brandon walked in, looking exhausted. "Steph, I'm just tired." "The project is taking up all my time," Brandon replied. "It's not just about being busy, Brandon. You're here, but not really here." "Is there something you're not telling me?" Stephanie pressed, her heart pounding with fear of what she might uncover. Brandon hesitated, a silence hanging between them, heavy and telling. Finally, he spoke, his voice barely a whisper. "Stephanie, I've made a mistake. I've been seeing someone else." The world seemed to stop for Stephanie. The confession hit her like a physical blow, her worst fears realized. "How could you? After everything we've been through?" she asked, her voice breaking. "It just happened, Stephanie. I never meant to hurt you." Brandon's words were feeble, unable to undo the damage his betrayal had caused. Stephanie, heartbroken and betrayed, demanded the truth, her mind racing with questions and disbelief. Brandon admitted to an affair with his accountant, a woman older than him, who had been working closely with him on the project. He spoke of confusion and lost direction, but his words were hollow to Stephanie's ears. In the days that followed, their home turned into a battlefield of emotions, with Stephanie struggling to come to terms with Brandon's betrayal. Their conversations were a mix of anger, pleas for forgiveness, and attempts at understanding. But the damage was deep, and the trust that had once been the foundation of their relationship was shattered. Brandon eventually made the painful decision to leave, his departure a stark echo of the abandonment Stephanie had faced before. He left a note filled with apologies and regret, but it was a small consolation for the gaping wound he had left in her heart. "Mom, why is Dad leaving? Didn't he love us?" Justin's tearful question broke Stephanie's heart all over again. "Sometimes love isn't enough to fix things, Justin. But no matter what, we'll get through this together," Stephanie answered, holding back her tears as she hugged her son. The house, once filled with the laughter and warmth of family, now echoed with the silence of loss and betrayal. Stephanie was once again left to pick up the pieces of her broken heart, to find a way to heal and move forward for the sake of her son and herself. In the depth of her despair, Stephanie realized that the cycle of heartache she had experienced was not just a test of her resilience, but also a painful lesson in love and forgiveness. As she faced the daunting task of rebuilding her life again, she knew that the journey ahead would require all the strength and courage she could muster. Months had passed since Brandon left, and the sharp sting of betrayal gradually dulled into a persistent ache in Stephanie's heart. She focused on rebuilding her life and being a rock for Justin, who missed the presence of a father figure. Their home, once filled with the laughter and warmth of a complete family, now echoed with a sense of incomplete. Stephanie found solace in her work, having started a small business in landscape design. It was a venture she had always dreamed of, and it gave her a sense of purpose and independence. Her designs were a reflection of her inner state, beautiful yet tinged with touch of melancholy. One evening, as she reviewed her designs, Justin came to her with a question that had been weighing on his mind. "Mom, will Dad ever come back? Do you still love him?" Justin's innocent eyes searched hers for an answer. Stephanie sighed, her heart aching for her son. "Justin, I don't know if Dad will come back, and my feelings for him are complicated. But what I do know is that we have each other, and we have to be strong. No matter what happens," she explained, her voice steady but soft. Justin nodded, his young mind trying to understand the complexities of adult relationships. "I just miss how things were," he whispered. Stephanie hugged him tightly. "I know, sweetheart. I miss it too." As time went on, Stephanie's business began to flourish, and she found a sense of accomplishment in her work. Her days were busy, but the nights were often long and lonely. Then, out of the blue, Brandon reappeared in her life. He called her one day, his voice, "Stephanie, it's Brandon. I've been thinking a lot, and I was wondering if we could meet. I understand if you don't want to, but there are things I need to say," he said, a hint of nervousness in his tone. Stephanie's heart raced, a whirlwind of emotions swirling within her. Part of her wanted to refuse, to hang up the phone and continue moving on. But another part needed closure, answers to the questions that haunted her nights. "All right, Brandon, we can meet. But I can't promise anything beyond that," she replied, her voice betraying a mix of apprehension and curiosity. They agreed to meet at a quiet cafe, a neutral place away from the memories of their shared past. Sitting across from Brandon, Stephanie braced herself. "Stephanie, first, I want to say I'm sorry. I know that's not enough, but I regret every pain I caused you and Justin." Brandon started, his eyes reflecting genuine remorse. "Why did you do it, Brandon? Why did you throw everything away?" Stephanie asked, her voice firm yet trembling. Brandon sighed, searching for words. "I lost myself, Stephanie. I got caught up in the success, the pressure, and I made a terrible mistake. I ended things with her soon after I left. There's not been a day I haven't regretted my actions." "Regret doesn't change what happened. You broke our family, Brandon. You broke my trust," Stephanie replied, her hurt evident. "I know, and I'll have to live with that. But I've been doing a lot of soul-searching. I've changed, Stephanie. I left my job, started therapy, and I've been trying to be a better person. For you, for Justin, for us. I still love you, Stephanie." Brandon confessed, his voice laced with hope and fear. Stephanie listened, her emotions a tumultuous sea. Part of her still cared for Brandon, yet the scars of his betrayal were deep. "Brandon, I don't know if I can ever trust you again. What you did. It changed everything," she said, her heart torn. "I understand, Stephanie. I don't expect forgiveness, not right away, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make things right. I just need a chance to prove that I'm not the man I was," Brandon pleaded. Stephanie was at a crossroads, her heart and mind in conflict. Could she give Brandon a chance to redeem himself? Could they rebuild what was broken? "Brandon, I need time to think. This isn't something I can decide right now," she said, her voice a whisper of uncertainty. Brandon nodded, accepting her response. "I'll wait for you, Stephanie. Take all the time you need," he said, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. As Stephanie walked away from the cafe, her mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. The road ahead was unclear, and she knew that whatever decision she made, it would change the course of their lives. forever. The crossroads of her heart were daunting, but she realized that no matter what path she chose, she would emerge stronger and wiser. The journey of healing and forgiveness was never easy, but perhaps it was the key to finding peace and moving. Months had passed since Stephanie's meeting with Brandon. The seasons changed, and with them, so did Stephanie's heart. Her days were a mix of contemplation and routine, her nights filled with reflection and unanswered questions. She poured her energy into her landscape design business and into being the best mother she could be for Justin. Yet, the question of Brandon lingered in her mind, a persistent whisper amid the noise of everyday life. One crisp autumn evening, as Stephanie closed her laptop after finishing a design project, Justin came to her, a curious look in his eyes. "Mum, have you thought about what you're going to do about Dad?" he asked, his question direct but gentle. Stephanie sighed, turning to face him. "I have, Justin. It's complicated. Your dad hurt us, but he's also trying to make things right. I'm just not sure if that's enough for us to start over," she explained, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "Do you still love him?" Justin's question was innocent but loaded with the complexity of adult emotions. Stephanie paused, searching within herself for the truth. "I don't know, honey. Part of me will always care for him. But love, that's something I'm still trying to figure out," she admitted, her honesty bridging the gap between mother and... As the holiday season approached, Stephanie received an unexpected invitation from Brandon. He had organized a small charity event for the local community center and wanted her and Justin to attend. After much deliberation, she decided to go, believing it would be a good opportunity for Justin to see his father. The night of the event, the community center was adorned with festive decorations, the atmosphere lively and welcoming. Brandon greeted them warmly, his eyes lighting up at the sight of Justin. "Stephanie, Justin, I'm so glad you could make it." "It means a lot to me," Brandon said, his voice sincere. "We wouldn't miss it. It's for a good cause, after all," Stephanie replied, offering a polite smile. The evening progressed with laughter and goodwill. Stephanie watched as Justin interacted with Brandon, their bond still strong despite the distance. It warmed her heart yet tugged at the unresolved strings of her emotions. As the event wound down, a slow melody began to play. Brandon approached Stephanie, a hint of nervousness in his stance. "Stephanie, may I have this dance?" he asked, extending his hand. Stephanie hesitated, the invitation catching her off guard. Looking into Brandon's eyes, she saw a glimmer of the man she had fallen in love with, the man she had married. With a nod, she accepted his hand, allowing him to lead her to the dance floor. As they swayed to the music, Brandon spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "I know I don't deserve a second chance, Stephanie, but being here with you, with Justin, it's all I've been hoping for. You don't have to decide anything tonight. Just know that I'm here, waiting and willing to do whatever it takes to make things right." Stephanie listened, her heart a mix of past hurt and tentative hope. "Brandon, I can see you're trying, and that means something. But I need to be sure, for my sake and for Justin's. We can't go back to how things were, but maybe we can find a new way forward." Brandon's eyes shone with a mixture of relief and hope. "I'll be patient, Stephanie. For you and Justin, I'll wait as long as it takes." The dance ended, but the moment marked the beginning of a new journey for Stephanie, Brandon, and Justin. It was a journey not of returning to the past, but of redefining their future. As Stephanie drove home that night, with Justin asleep in the back seat, she realized that the dance of destiny was not always a straight path. It was a journey of twists and turns, of learning and growing, of forgiving and healing. Her heart, once shattered, had found the strength to beat again, to embrace the possibilities that lay ahead. In the quiet of her home, Stephanie looked out the window at the starry sky, a sense of peace settling in her heart. The road ahead was uncertain, but she knew that whatever the future held, she would face it with courage. grace, and an open heart. The dance of destiny had taught her that the most profound strength lies in the resilience of the human spirit and the capacity to love and hope against all